Okay, so I'm Gina. I'm the greenhouse manager at the Arboretum, and we are open from May to October, and we now sell plants every single day that we're open, Wednesday through Friday, 9 to 4. So come get them.
Awesome. Yeah, there's not a lot of sources for native plants around. So,
Very true and very sad.
Yeah, it is. So it's wonderful the Arboretum is doing that. Thank you, Gina, for doing that. Yeah, so the topic today is fall planting. I have been trying to encourage people to do fall planting for as long as we've run a nursery.
Yes.
And I've found that people think it's a plant selling gimmick, that I'm just trying to sell plants in the fall when they shouldn't be planting.
No.
So I'm trying to steal your credentials here so that you can explain to people that that this is actually a really good idea to do fall planting.
Okay, well, let me look at the camera and say she's not lying. Not at all. It is very true. In fact, it is the best time to plant native perennials specifically, and that there are many reasons for that. Should we go over them?
Yes, let's delve into the many reasons for fall planting.
Well, one thing that comes to mind for me, just being a greenhouse manager, is there are way fewer pests in the fall.
Yep.
That is huge.
It is.
In the spring, they are hatching, they are abundant, and they will go after those tender transplants immediately. And in the fall, I find that that's far less the case.
That makes sense. Yeah, they're like reproducing a lot less this time of year. They're just not at that life stage where they're going after your plants so
much.
Nice. Yep. That's one that I have not talk to people about.
Yeah,
but that's
it's
a great
so devastating
point.
I mean, you can get insects outside too that will just annihilate any transplants.
And this year's been so bad with the grasshoppers around town. I know a lot of people who bought plants that they specifically bought to keep grasshoppers away, like mint, that got subsequently eaten by grasshoppers.
Yes,
so
exactly. Nothing is grasshopper proof, I don't think.
No, not during a year like this. It's been too dry.
Yeah, too dry. Exactly. And that's another huge thing for fall planting is there's far less watering to do. So in the spring when it's super hot and you have a new transplant in the ground and it tends to be really windy, I find that you're watering way more, and if you do it in the fall, there tends to be more moisture in the air in general. We're coming off monsoon season, and there's just less watering to do.
Right. Yeah. That I think is the biggest reason that I plant in the fall. It's just I'm so bad. I mean, I love my plants. We grow a lot of them, but when it comes to the landscaping plants, I just don't put the time and love into them that I should.
It's hard.
So yeah, watering once a month in the winter, that's way better than having to water like 3 times a week during the middle of the summer.
Exactly.
And yes, the spring winds in Flagstaff are intense.
Brutal.
So putting in, especially if you're not getting plants that were grown locally that have like dealt with some of the weather here, you're getting things that are shipped up from the valley or from California. And then
they don't know what that wind is.
They have not experienced the level of dry, intense wind that we have up here before, and it's so hard on those poor babies.
Yeah. Another huge thing for fall planting that always comes to mind that makes sense in my brain is that in the spring the soil is coming off of being cold for months and is still cold, and in the fall it's coming off of being warm for months and is still warm. So when your soil is warm and the air is cool, your plants are going to be far less stressed, and the root growth that occurs, which is the huge thing about fall planting, right? You're not going to get big payoffs with huge growth planting anything in the fall above ground,
right?
But that below ground growth that happens is going to be very, very good for the following year.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people forget that the majority of the plant actually is underground.
Yes, that's where the magic happens.
Right. And that you're shooting for root growth.
Yes.
So basically the plants will keep growing roots all the way until the ground freezes, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So, and then in the spring they'll kind of start compensating for you'll see the benefits in the spring when they throw out a bunch of growth in the spring.
Yeah, because that's something that I feel like everyone who's planted something in the spring can see. There's huge transplant shock. The plants have to adjust to living in Flagstaff. As we know, Flagstaff gardening is super challenging. And when you plant in the fall, that following spring, that new growth that comes just, when it emerges from that soil is so exciting, and it thrives just right off the bat. It doesn't have that transplant shock.
Right. Yeah, I try and explain it to people a lot. Like, if you let them, if they're on their way into dormancy, it's like performing surgery when someone's asleep. Versus trying to perform surgery when they're like awake and trying to do all of their activities.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah.
great.
And I'm like one of those people who's always looking for like the least expensive way to do my planting too. And usually I can go get plants like 50% off around town.
This is true.
In the fall,
Yeah.
and then I plant them in the fall, and they come up in the spring, and they're twice as big as when I put them in the ground.
Exactly.
Like, they immediately put on all of this new growth in the spring. And I guess I've been planting as late as like the end of November.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what you would recommend for how late. Like, I think I've heard people say that you like shrubs and trees in November are still fine, but I still put in perennials and they've done fine.
Yeah.
But what would your recommendation be?
Yeah, for out, I think it depends on how cold you are.
Mm-hmm.
As we've talked about, you live on the warmer side of town.
Right.
The Arboretum out here is extremely cold.
Right.
And just from the phenology of plants, which means the time that it blooms, the Arboretum tends to be a full month behind town.
Okay.
So I also use that logic to subtract, like I subtract a month from basically everything. So you stop in November, I stop in October.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So
And that's pretty much like October 15th is generally my cutoff date, but that's because we are just so much colder.
right.
Because
yeah.
you do need, the plant needs some time
Right.
to establish itself a little bit before the hard freezes come.
Okay. That does lead into another question I have. I do have a lot of people who they want to buy plants and not put them in the ground in the fall.
Mm.
Can you speak at all to the benefits of putting them in the ground versus keeping them in a container because they want to wait to plant them in the spring? What are the challenges of keeping a plant in a container over the winter?
You will be much more of a slave to that plant, what I would say. It will need more water, for sure. I also just find that when you keep it in a container, if you're leaving it outside, you kind of are running the risk of fatality way more so than in the ground. It just seems like it has less insulation, basically, is my logic.
Right. Yeah, that's what I always tell people is like the freeze thaw on the plant is really hard on it if it's in a pot versus like if it's in the ground and it's protected by the soil around it.
Yeah.
And I guess I also have spoken with a lot of people that want to take those plants in the house and like baby them through the winter in their home.
Oh, interesting.
And so what would your feelings on that be?
Yeah, so I have strong feelings on this because I have found just from growing in containers for the Arboretum and for our nursery that plants really need a time of dormancy to fully thrive.
Right.
And so the plants that I have in our heated greenhouse through the winter do not, in the spring, they don't look as good as the plants that I have in the unheated greenhouse in the winter that do go into full dormancy, and then come spring, they regrow. So I think that full cycle of winter is really necessary for thriving plants. It's not that they're going to die and just be done. I mean, when you're rolling the dice, it depends on how well you take care of it in your home and how much sun it gets and all of these things, which in the winter it's not going to get enough sun, period. I think it's just better to plant them and go for that because nature has its own way of doing things.
Absolutely.
And plants know it very well.
Right. Yeah, I think of it kind of like if you didn't let a bear hibernate that was supposed to. Like it would throw off its cycles.
Yeah.
And
it's not that it would die, it's that it just wouldn't be thriving.
Right. Yeah. It would be not beneficial. Okay, cool. I'm glad that we're on the same page.
Yeah, totally. One thing that I find is that there's this, and I have it too, a very primal urge to garden in the spring.
Yes.
Like we ourselves have come through winter, and it's been cold and dry and things are we've just been
Right.
dead, you know,
Right.
looking, you know, because we can't see under the soil. And once it starts warming up and things start growing, like I want to get out and I want to plant stuff.
Right.
But I have found that planting in the spring can lead to fatality far more than planting in the fall.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They can't handle that rough spring weather that we have here.
Right.
And freezes happen way more frequently.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's hard. But, you know, ideally you go all season long.
Yep.
You're gardening all season.
Yeah, if you have the patience to do it, then absolutely. If you have the water to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's a fall planting plus weed competition. We didn't talk about that.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
the spring and summer, the weeds grow
That's true.
relentlessly.
Absolutely.
And in the fall, they kind of stop. It's not that they're not there. It's just that planting something, removing the weeds around it, there will be less aggressive growth of those weeds.
I could see that being
Less work.
major, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
I've never
It's
thought
easier.
of that before.
Yeah. Cooler temperatures, reduce plant stress, fewer pests, less watering, root growth, opportunity for establishment. The soil is warm and the air is cool, which is ideal for transplants.
Awesome.
Which in the spring, the soil is not warm, and that's the main difference, I think.
Right. I've talked with a lot of people, especially with like annual gardening,
Yes.
that like they just can't wait until the soil warms up enough, and then they stunt their plants, I feel like, trying to get going too soon.
I also do say for that like primal urge of like wanting to garden in spring, like if you do wait until May when it's, you know, reasonably warm if you're in town,
Right.
plant annuals. Like
Yeah.
get that urge out by planting some pansies.
Yeah.
And then like once monsoons start hitting and through fall, that's when you get your native perennials. And
Okay.
you really go for it.
Awesome. All right. That's great
Yes.
advice. Because, yeah, then you
But
can
you
kind of
can't avoid
balance
it.
it. Right.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to people, like, now that we are getting into fall, what else would be appropriate to do since we, you know, you do your planting in the fall? What would be other appropriate kind of like preparation and pre-planning for your spring planting that you would recommend in the fall and winter, I guess?
That's a great question, and one that I feel very passionately about is actually to not clean up your gardens.
Okay.
I know there's like HOA things that people have to meet,
Right.
and it's unfortunate, but I really find, and we practice it here at the Arboretum, that if you leave even, you know, your perennials that maintain their stalks, like leave everything, leave your leaves. It acts as natural mulch, which, you know, helps insulate the plant roots. It also just really helps support pollinators who lay their eggs in those leaves, and you'll have a much more healthy ecosystem in your yard if you resist the urge to clean up, which I know some people want to, but they can't, or they just,
Right.
you know.
Well, I've talked to people before too about like if you must, for whatever reason, internally or externally,
Yes.
that if you had to cut stems and things, putting them somewhere like in your yard still that's just out
Yeah.
of the way.
Chop and drop.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
it's maybe not ideal, but it would be better than sending those things to the dump,
Yes.
and you would preserve some of your pollinators
Yeah.
and beneficial insects.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
But yes, and it is hard for some people to just resist. 'Cause
Yeah.
you want to make
They want it
everything tidy.
Yeah. And you can tidy it, you know, you can make it look more intentional, like freshly laid mulch with your leaves. I think there are ways to tidy and also support the ecosystem. But when you think about it, you know, all the wildlands, like no one's going and cleaning up the leaves
Right.
in the forest, and
Right.
that is in fact how everything is supported and grows.
Right. Yeah. No. We go get other people's leaves
Yeah.
and bring them into our yard to mulch
Yes.
our plants in the winter.
Yeah.
When would you recommend people wait until to do their cleanup in the
cleanup.
spring?
Yeah, so this is a debated topic, I feel like, because I have seen sources say as late as June, and for us, like, again, we're a botanical garden open to the public, so we have to maintain some sort of cleanly presence.
Right.
We usually start in April, which can feel a little early too because not everything is hatched, but we also try to leave as much as possible to just
on the ground
compost,
there.
yeah,
Okay.
just biodegrade on our soil. It helps enrich it, adds nutrients. There's a lot of benefits to it.
Awesome. And do you recommend that people add compost and things in the fall versus the spring?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually tend to do it in the spring, but I think a lot of people do it in the fall.
Okay.
So
no reason not to, just depending on your preference.
yeah, that's kind of how at least for the vegetable garden, I like to just kind of get those beds prepped in the spring as it warms up, add that compost in. I can't plant until mid-June for tender vegetables, so
Okay, cool.
yeah, I can start working in May and really get that compost worked in, but you can absolutely do it in fall, and I think a lot of people do say that you should. So I think probably ideally twice, right?
Yeah,
Keep
why
adding
not?
that compost,
Right, you
spring and
always
fall.
need it. You always
Yeah,
need it. Yeah. I always joke it's like when you first start gardening, you're like sprinkling the compost on, and then you garden for a while, and you're like, bring in the dump truck.
Yes, get the
Like,
tractor out.
Right, several inches of compost on top of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, it helps.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah.
being willing to sit down and do an interview for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And can you just tell folks again how late the Arboretum is going to be open this season and when they'll open in the spring?
Yes, we are open through October. The retail nursery generally closes down mid-October just because, again, we are so cold out here. So it's kind of determined on weather there. But we have fun fall activities like pumpkin walk, so stay tuned for that. And then we close up and we reopen in May.
Awesome. Thank you.